In this lesson, we're going to look at drawing in 3D and drawing through forms. And we are realist artists, so we are drawing things in such a way that they can be believed to exist in a 3D world. And as such, we need to move our minds away from drawing simple shapes, right? And instead toward drawing forms, right? Where the viewer can perceive multiple sides of an object, right? So in this example here, we've taken this squarish shape, and added some sides to it. So now we have a front, a side, and a bottom view of the object. And it is much more believable looking three-dimensional in a sense, right? Even if it's very simplistic 3D. So drawing in 3D helps us convince the viewer and persuade the viewer of the believability of what we're drawing. Now this method I've kind of done here is kind of a shorthand for getting something to look 3D very quickly. You can take any simple shape and add an additional line to it, and it gives it the perception that it has multiple planes, right? Multiple sides. So on the circle, this might be a button. We've turned the circle into a button by giving it a front view and a side view. You can also use this method for other objects, multiple objects really, such as a rock. No one would viably believe that this is a rock. However, if we take this particular shape and we simply give another line to it, for example through here, now we're kind of indicating additional planes, right? That the viewer can see more sides of the object. Let's argument say that's the front and the side. And when you then detail these types of shapes a little bit more, they become quite convincing in their portrayal of what they're supposed to be. So I'm kind of erase the line a little bit, put a little shape there, a dot, some dots, and maybe give it another little plane. And it becomes, you know, a fairly convincing, if slightly cartoonish looking rock. So this is a simplistic method where you're simply saying to yourself, I don't want shapes in my piece. I want forms. And so you're taking simple shapes that you may be drawing and just adding additional planes to them, right? Bringing them into a 3D world. Okay, so that's kind of the first basic way that you can understand how to move from someone who perhaps sticks to very 2D flat looking work, how you can kind of start bringing that work into the 3D realm. But I wanted you guys to know this, but this is not the primary way I want us to think about drawing in 3D. The primary way I want us to think about drawing in 3D is what is called drawing through or drawing through forms, all right? So in the real world, there really aren't such things as 2D flat shapes per se. Everything's 3D to some extent, right? You know, even stickers, stickers are completely flat, but, if you look at them with a microscope, you'll see that they do have width, height, length, and so on, and they are three-dimensional. Nevertheless, drawing through forms is really imagining the other sides of the object as you attempt to draw it. So over here, I'm imagining the other sides of this box, and drawing these elements in helps me feel out all the different sides of the box. So here we can see all 6 sides of the box. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the front one, 6, right? So we can imagine all 6 sides of the box. And similarly with spheres as well, this is just a circle, but by drawing a contour line, and this would be done in your construction phase, right? It helps us as the artist to feel out the three-dimensionality of the object that we're drawing. So you can add contour lines on the surface of objects as well as drawing through the forms to help you figure out the volumetric kind of mass of the object, or at least how the object feels in 3D, right? Not the exact mass, obviously. And a very popular shape for drawing through and helping you, especially in character art, is the simple cylinder. So to draw a cylinder effectively, I draw 2 ellipses, kind of connect them, and this would be the background drawn through line. And when I do the final clean drawing, I'll only keep the sides that I want to see, right? So it would be that bottom section and that top section. But, so let's just say this is the bottom, and let's just say this is the top. But drawing through has helped me establish a convincing outer edge here because I've used an ellipse to guide me. And so I have a really appealing 3D cylinder shape, all right? And when we start adding dynamism to this, which we'll look at in the next lesson, so we take a cylinder and then we add some dynamism to it, we can start getting much more complex forms. So here are some contour lines to help us understand, and I've drawn through the shape. So here we can basically see both entrances to the horn. It looks like some kind of horn, right? And so that's possibly going down. But ultimately, these contour lines help us imagine the form. So this is effectively what drawing through is. You're drawing through forms. You're imagining objects in 3 dimensions. Now let me say this. There are very few things that are really going to push your brain as much as trying hard to kind of, especially if you're a beginner, move away from this 2-dimensional idea of drawing and forcing yourself to think sculpturally, in a sense, and to think about forms of objects or basic shapes that you want to draw, basic 3D shapes. And you really have to get your mind around this. And it does take some practice, although it doesn't take too much time. If you're doing the practice exercises, you start getting used to it. And the great thing is, when you can imagine multiple sides of an object, right? When you start thinking in 3D and also looking at the world around you and imagining all the planes and all the different sides of objects, right? Getting a deeper view of observing the world, you're then able to easily rotate objects around in the virtual space of the page. So take a cylinder, for example. Let's just assume this is us directly looking at the cylinder from the bottom, front on view. And on that note, front views and direct side views are things we do not want in art. Let me reiterate that. We do not want direct front on views. We do not want direct side on views unless they're specifically being designed for the purposes of blueprinting or character spec sheets or something like that. But generally speaking, for an appealing piece of artwork, you don't want a direct front or side view, especially in illustrative work. But nevertheless, this is our cylinder. It doesn't look like much of a cylinder right now. Let's rotate the cylinder slightly to the right, just slightly. So what I'm doing is I'm drawing through here, and this has become an ellipse. Can't be a circle anymore because it's rotating in perspective slightly. And through drawing through, I've rotated the cylinder slightly to the right, slightly to the left, mind you. So it's rotated that way. We've moved it that way. Let's do more of an extreme rotation, and I'm going to draw through again. And here is me rotating the cylinder to even more of an extent left. All right. And eventually we'll probably end up with a side view that looks something like this. All right. Like that would be a direct side view. And we've continuously rotated it. And we can then take that further and basically do the opposite of number 2 here. And rotate it even more left. And that will have us have our cylinder kind of going backwards now. All right. And that's not quite as right as it should be, but nevertheless, it has rotated even more in that direction. And then we can kind of bring it back to a slightly, just a very slight rotation. Looks a little bit strange, but nevertheless. And as we're doing this, we're drawing through the forms, except for the side view. I mean, don't really need to draw through that one. It's the direct side view, same as the front view. And we are getting a sense of the dimensions of the object, right? Just putting this dot on the side to help us kind of feel out the planes that we're seeing as this cylinder rotates. All right, so effectively that's what drawing through is. The concept is pretty straightforward, right? The concept is pretty straightforward, but to get it ingrained in your brain is going to take some practice, especially if you've never done this before. All right, I'm going to do a cube here one more time, or a box. Let's just say a box. And basically I'm just drawing through, I'm imagining all the sides, and I'm just connecting them together. Another key thing, before we end this lesson, another key thing to realize is that all of the complex forms, you imagine arms, you imagine legs and hands and feet, and these things just seem immensely complex, and there's anatomy and there's skin surface and muscles and skeletal systems to take into account and so on. But really, fundamentally, most of these things are really just made of boxes. They're made of cylinders and various kind of triangular forms, but very basic triangular forms. They're not made of anything super complex. And what we do as artists, as realist artists, is we have a workflow that we follow, a structural workflow that we follow to build things from shape into form, into details. And that is how we get our completed rough, which we can then refine up to a completed piece of work. So we use these kind of basic types of shapes, whether it's any type of cuboid shape, any types of cylindrical shapes. For example, we may bend the cylinder as well to get certain limbs, right? But still drawing through to feel that form, putting contour lines on top of it to feel the forms out if we need to, if we're not perceiving it well enough, right? Using spheres to connect joints and other things and to draw heads, for example. You might draw a cranium as a sphere, then attach a jaw section to it, right? So we're constantly thinking about forms and drawing through the forms and imagining the volume and the mass of the forms. All right, so that's drawing in 3D and drawing through forms. Please definitely engage hardcore into these particular exercises, because once you get this, the basic foundations of drawing in 3D will be instilled in you. That's the end of this lesson.